So in the last video, I talked about delivery models and the various combinations of customer, delivery partner, and MuleSoft professional services that can be engaged in order to deliver a successful MuleSoft engagement, whether that be for a full implementation of a MuleSoft product or for a limited engagement within an existing capability, because an engagement can take place at any point in a capability's history. Now, in this video, I want to cover the roles and responsibilities that you will expect to find in any Catalyst engagement. And there'll be two videos. This one will be on the delivery organisation and the next one will be on the customer organisation. We'll come on to that more later in the video. So before I do that, I want to raise one very important point to consider if you're working in a customer organisation. At this point, I'm going to introduce a new type of tip because I want these videos to be relatable to business as well as the certification. So I'm now going to introduce business tips, and this is going to be business tip 1. So for each customer organisation, you need to carefully consider the shape of your ongoing MuleSoft capability, as it will have major impacts on recruitment, it will have major impact on finance going forward, and it will also have major impact on the way that you actually operate your business. So if the intention is to exit the engagement with an internal capability, then the organisation needs to consider training of existing staff, recruitment of experienced MuleSoft staff, and the ongoing financial impact that that will have, because you need to keep your people up to date and experienced. People learning MuleSoft have a steep learning curve, and people with MuleSoft experience can be difficult to find and expensive to employ. So if a delivery partner is to remain when the capability is in production, operational status, then the cost of this must be recognised, and you should recognise that the delivery partner staff will change over time. Now, you may get the A team for implementation, or people that are experienced with implementation, but then you're highly likely to find that staff rotate, and you might then get a different team, what you might refer to, I suppose, as a B team. So that's just something to be aware of. You need to be prepared to control the staff that are working and be aware of all the implications on that. Okay, so now let's go into exam tip 1. So you'll need to be aware for the certification which roles are suggested to come from which organisation. Now, you may get a question on this in the exam. Some roles are definitely from the delivery partner. Some roles will definitely be from the organisation or the customer, and some could be filled by either. So I'm not going to go into detailed job specifications here, as each organisation will have its own definition of each job role, but I will cover which roles are expected to come from the customer and what roles are expected to come from the delivery organisation, just in case this question does come up in the certification, and also to give you an idea of what you can expect when you start an engagement. For each role, I'll give my own top considerations of what is required for the person occupying the role. So, business tip 2. Before I go into this, I'll strongly suggest that for all technical roles, and I'll highlight these as we go through, the person occupying the role should have the appropriate MuleSoft certification to undertake this role, and, importantly, the experience to do this, certainly if they are in key roles. They will be required to execute quite complex tasks in some case. So the MuleSoft certification, while it's great to show that they are capable, it's not everything that you may need. You may need, like train the trainer, an experienced MuleSoft person to train the ones that are less experienced, but we'll come on to that later. It's also important to say at this point that one person may be able to undertake more than one of the roles that I'm going to talk about. So let's start then with the delivery organisation, as I said, and then the next video we'll tackle the customer organisation. I do this because it's important to understand each role, as there may be a question in the certification, as I've said, relating to which role should be undertaken. And it's very important that you read these scenario-based questions to get the tip of what the answer actually is, what they're looking for in the multiple choices that you will be given. So each engagement will require a delivery manager. That's the first role we're going to talk about, who I would suggest needs to be familiar with the MuleSoft ecosystem, but does not necessarily need to have any MuleSoft certifications. They are a delivery manager, so it's more project management focused than technical. If they do have a certification, then the delivering successful business outcomes with MuleSoft's Catalyst, the one we're talking about, would be, in my view, the appropriate certification for them to hold. Whatever, they should be familiar with the MuleSoft Catalyst, its contents, and how it is to be used. So none of the stuff that we've talked about in the videos up to now and the future videos should be news to them. They should be fully familiar with that. The delivery manager will be responsible for overseeing a portfolio of projects and ensuring alignment with business outcomes and KPIs. Remember, we've talked in previous videos about defining the business outcomes and how to measure those business outcomes. So they're responsible for overseeing that. They need to define and track the KPIs for consumption, developer engagement, and productivity. Now, they also need to provide program oversight and assist with the planning and driving the business outcomes. So they need to be fully familiar and focused on the business outcomes so that they can actually manage the delivery of those outcomes. In order to do that, they'll need to collaborate with customers to establish a Centre for Enablement operating model and an internal support framework. And in order to do this, they're going to have to assess customer resource skills and contribute to the C3 backlog and activity planning. Now, one of the other things they need to do is track and resolve MuleSoft issues that arise, because there will be some as you go through the project, and they will need to focus on resolving those. They now need to manage delivery team budgets, consumed hours, and the project status, because they will be reporting to the customer side. So it's important for them to do that. And this is the key role really that sits between the delivery partner and the customer. So it really needs to be someone experienced in that area with customer relationships and managing customers as well. Now let's talk about the business analyst. Now the business analyst role in the MuleSoft engagement is primarily the same as in any projects. And that is to say, they discover, they document, they prioritize, and they manage customer requirements. However, we must recognize that there is an additional level of knowledge required to put the requirements in the context of integration, which is what we're all about with certainly with the MuleSoft AnyPoint platform. And in respect to the requirements, these will be handed over to the integration architect. So the business analysts will be tasked with creating complex process flows and system context diagrams. They need to put together a pack of requirements and supporting documents that can be handed over to the integration architect. But as in all business analyst engagement, there will be some non-functional requirements as well. But in respect of integrations, these will be in the form of, for instance, response times and transaction rates, just to name a couple. Now, no particular certification is required for a business analyst in this context, but a familiarity with integration types and a basic understanding of the MuleSoft capability would certainly be an advantage and would be expected from a business analyst from a delivery partner, I would suggest. So you want an experienced integration business analyst as opposed to a pure business analyst. But again, that's down for the delivery partner and the customer to agree. Right, so we've gone through those sort of business-based roles, and now we come to the technical roles, which are platform architect, integration architect, and the MuleSoft developer. Now, all three of these roles need to hold the appropriate certification, and having taken and passed all three of these certifications, I can confidently say that they are not easy certifications to obtain. You need to have studied and have experience of MuleSoft in order to get these three certifications. So I'm going to come on now to business tip 3. When selecting people to take on these roles, holding the certification, as I've already said, I think, is not enough in itself, in my opinion. The customer should look at for at least 2 years experience for each of these roles. And additionally, it may be worth considering a development lead who holds the MuleSoft Developer Level 2 certification to mentor and manage other developers, even if that comes from the delivery organisation, because the customer organisation will be learning, hopefully, from the delivery organisation, especially if it's envisaged that the customer staff will take over and the delivery partners staff will leave at some point in the future. Business tip 4, they're coming thick and fast in this video. Use the delivery partner team members to educate your customer team, as I've just said, and hopefully it should be a transition, if that's the way that the engagement is going to move, from the delivery team to the customer team. You may wish to consider an integrated team structure of the delivery partners and the customer team to be as part of the terms of the engagement that you set up with that delivery partner. Okay, so having said that, let's look at the high-level responsibilities of the platform architect. So in its simplest terms, the platform architect is responsible for the initial configuration of the MuleSoft platform and ensuring that the platform takes a secure place in the customer's infrastructure and support processes. Very important that it does mix with the customer's support processes. And this means that the platform architect must work closely with the customer's security and network teams to ensure that the initial implementation is secure and capable of scaling to meet the customer's strategic expansion and expectations, especially if the data that the customer is going to be processing will come from a number of different data sources. You will need to open up firewalls to those data sources. So the platform architect will need to define, document and maintain processes to allow prediction of future capacity requirements and work with the DevOps teams to implement a CI/CD pipeline and practices and automation as much as possible for the code deployments. We don't want to be involved in manual tasks where we can avoid them. Now, the platform architect, as I've said, should hold the MuleSoft Certified Platform Architect certification, and in my view have at least 2 years of experience in implementing and maintaining the MuleSoft platform. Now I need to talk about the integration architect role. The integration architecture certification was, in my experience at least, the most difficult of the certifications that I've achieved personally. It was a difficult exam. But the integration architect will take input from the business analyst, as we've described, and turn those into integration designs with a focus on leveraging reusable assets wherever possible, components, standards, frameworks, and processes to ensure that wherever possible we're reusing components and that the actual need to build is minimized. So remember, we've always talked in previous videos about driving reuse, and this is true with the integration architect. You should be architecting for reuse. But the integration architect role does not consist entirely of designing integrations, in my view. They're also required to support the development process, provide coaching and mentoring support to the developers, select the deployment approaches and the configuration of the platform, including the runtime and control planes, and advise the technical team on performance scalability, reliability, monitoring, and other operational aspects of the platform. They have a very wide role, and this is, or should be considered, in my view at least, a senior role within the capability. The integration architect role is pervasive in nearly all aspects of the design, development, testing, and productionization of integration solutions. And finally, in this video, I come to the developer role. Now, until recently, there was just a single developer certification from MuleSoft. However, a new certification that I have referred to is now available so that you can achieve a developer certification level 2. And by all accounts, it's very difficult to achieve. Now, I've got the developer level 1 certification, but as this is not my day job, I won't be taking the level 2 certification. I think that is probably reserved for people that are day-to-day developers and want to become development team leaders or mentoring in the development area. Now, I would suggest to the customer that you look at recruiting or training someone to obtain the level 2 certification with a view to managing and mentoring the development team, as I've said. I think this would be a very good way of having a development team leader. Now, the development role is tasked with developing ongoing designs passed from the integration architect. They'll work to an agreed schedule using best practices and guidelines, and like I've said, developing for reuse. So, they should actually be writing new code as a minimum amount and reusing everything else that they can. Common error handlers, common audit loggers, all of those sorts of common elements that have been designed before will become part of their developer toolkit. Like I say, the developer will look to reduce the development of new code by harvesting those reusable assets from previous projects and drive the reuse of templates and common services which are managed by the Centre for Enablement. As a final task, the developer will oversee deployment activities and enforce governance gates on code promotion to higher environments. Now, finally, it's important to recognise that the developer will be required in support roles in order to provide development capabilities in fixing bugs or operational issues that arise as the capability matures. This will be an ongoing task, obviously, because it is a support task. And so that brings this video to a conclusion. And next time I'll start to look at roles that are recommended to come from the customer organisation. Like I say, we might see some of the roles that I've talked about again, but we will see other roles that certainly if the customer is going to take on their own running of the platform, then they will need to have these roles within their customer organisation. And if they are going to maintain a relationship with the delivery organisation, then they need to plan how that will actually work. So I hope this has been useful. We've introduced some business tips. There will be more business tips as we go through the videos, because we're more into the sort of engagement areas now and the business and organisational areas of the course. So I hope the business tips have been useful. I hope the exam tips have been useful. We will come back later on to look at exam tips again. And hopefully I'll see you in the next video.